Thank you so much for your introduction. Actually, a month ago, my center was extended to become the Global Center for the Unification. I am honored to speak to you today, and I would like to make 4 points today.
Unification and the International Peace Center in Korea University. It is my honor to take part in this participation in the International Forum on One Korea. In my view, first, my view on the establishment of the Korea-US alliance with the inauguration of government in Korea. South Korea and the United States are allies that share liberal democracy and market economy values. With liberal democracy in trouble around the world, the Korea-US alliance should play a role for the desirable future of international order. Cooperation with Japan is also important to protect liberal democracy in Asia along with the Korea-US alliance. The launch of Yoon Suk-yeol government should serve as an opportunity for the cooperation of the three countries.
I believe the trilateral cooperation among South Korea, the US, and Japan should be normalized, and that should be recognized clearly by the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. And as you are well aware, actually the communication between Japan and South Korea was lacking under the previous administration. And actually the communication between the US and South Korea was insufficient. And since the anti-Japan sentiment was used for political gains at home, we should bring the Korea-Japan relationship back to normalcy. So what the Yoon Suk-yeol administration should do first is to normalize the relationship with Japan. And the second point I want to make has to do with the North Korean nuclear program. 11 rounds of missile tests were conducted, and recently the ICBM test seems to be underway, and there are some news reports that say that the North Korean nuclear threat is rising. So I want to talk about how we can deal with this situation. So in the short term, every time North Korea launches its missile, we exercised an extended deterrence strategy. So likewise, when an ICBM is actually launched or a nuclear test is conducted, we need to mobilize the U.S. ROK extended deterrence strategy. And another thing that's needed is a multilateral diplomatic cooperation. However, if North Korea actually conducts its eighth nuclear test, then I think, as President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol said, the additional deployment of THAAD is necessary. I think the actual timing of the deployment would be when North Korea actually conducts its eighth nuclear test. But personally, I believe before launching of the nuclear test in North Korea, deploying additional battery of THAAD should be considered thoroughly. And if North Korea continues its nuclear program development, or if it decides to give up and receives support from the international community and stabilizes its regime so that its socialist state might be in place and Kim Jong-un 정권 might be in power, but at least some reasonable change might be able to occur. Without such change, the fundamental solution to the North Korean nuclear issue might be unlikely. If the international community, I think international community and the US and South Korea should help North Korea achieve economic success. And thirdly, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the emergence of a new Cold War centered around the China and U.S. conflict, there is a growing worry over the new Cold War era. Especially in 2018, after the U.S.-DPRK summit, North Korea emerged on the global stage, meeting President Xi Jinping. Therefore, North Korea's trilateral cooperation with China, Russia, was somehow recovered. However, South Korea's ties with Japan were almost severed, and the cooperation between the South and the U.S. was insufficient. And that is why I want to emphasize again the revitalization of the cooperation. Actually, during the Moon Jae-in administration, we were a bit aligned with China. I think that is why the U.S. had some suspicion about the U.S. ROK alliance. So I think we need to resolve such suspicion and mistrust going forward. And as we are faced with the U.S.-China conflict, how can we deal with this issue? I think this is a Korean Peninsula issue. I think we need to make sure that the Korean Peninsula issue shouldn't trigger a further conflict between the U.S. and China. And since it is in the interest of the international community to prevent the provocations from North Korea, so a deployment of strategic assets in South Korea would be necessary. However, we also need to make sure that the situation on the Korean Peninsula does not trigger further conflict between the U.S. and China. Lastly, I would like to talk about how we can achieve a free and unified Korea. I think the U.S. ROK alliance is moving toward a value alliance, going beyond the security alliance and economic alliance. And we need to advocate for human rights as the alliance as well. I believe that U.S. ROK alliance can evolve into an alliance that fits the needs of the 21st century. And I think the direction that Dr. Moon set out is the desirable direction for the alliance. I think the U.S. ROK alliance should always keep in mind a clear value of a free and unified Korea. So rather than being swayed by the current geopolitical or global situations, we should set our eyes on this common goal of a free and unified Korea. And if the US and South Korea are aligned in this common goal, we can build a value alliance for the 21st century. And I hope the United States and the international community can provide support for a unified Korea.